Hilchos Sukkah Perek Revi'i. It's really Hilchos Shofar v'Sukkah v'Lulav. It's one big group of chapters about Shofar, Sukkah, and Lulav. The first three were about Shofar. And today, the day after Simchat Torah, we start to learn about the Sukkah that we just celebrated. Excuse my voice a little bit. It's just it's a post-Simchat Torah voice. I also didn't have a chance to prepare so many visuals, even though in Sukkah visuals are quite important, but we'll do our best. And of course, we're dedicating the learning that we do today, Lischut, all those that are injured, wounded in the Holy Land, and Leilu Nishmat, all the hundreds.
My kibbutz was burned to the ground, and 50 people are in Gaza, and most of them, a lot of them are dead. They probably burned people alive.
The news is beyond, it's beyond anything. From afar, the Rebbe always taught we can do mitzvahs, especially those mitzvahs that protect. Tefillin is a mitzvah which protects. Mezuzah is a mitzvah which protects. Torah is a mitzvah which protects. So here we are learning Torah, and it should be a great merit for all of our Achenu B'nai Yisrael in Eretz Yisrael. Amen. Halacha Aleph says the Rambam, Shir HaSukkah. The measurements of a sukkah goes like this. Gavha ein paches me'asara tvachim v'lo yasar al esrim amma. In terms of height, it can be no less than 10 tvachim, somewhere between 30 and 40 inches, and no higher than 20 amot, which is about 30 feet. So if you're making a tall sukkah, it can't be that tall. It can be very wide, as we'll soon see in a second, but tall is a limitation. The area has to be no less than 7 by 7 handbreadths. The Talmud says it's an area where a person can fit with most of his body and a table, a very small table. But you can add to the area as big as you want. It could be multiple kilometers even. The sukkah here is quite big. It can host about 100 people. People make massive sukkahs covering their entire backyards. Hotels convert, whole dining areas into sukkahs. It's no problem how big it is, but the height is what matters. If the sukkah was less than 10 tfachim tall, or an area less than 7 by 7 handbreadths, or even the tiniest bit higher than 20 amot, 20 cubits, it's disqualified.
What's so terrible about the higher height?
Why can't it be so high?
Yeah.
There's two reasons. One, the Talmud gives is that the whole idea of sitting in a sukkah is to create an awareness that you're in a sukkah. Once the roof is so high, your eyes won't even go there. And you won't remember the mainstay of the sukkah.
Even though you see the stars or whatever.
You see the stars, but the natural eye won't go up to the schach. Second reason is because, at least in those times, if you wanted to make a structure that high, it had to be permanent. It couldn't be temporary. And a sukkah has to be temporary. By the way, with a 7 by 7 area, it has to actually be a square. Even if you have an area of 49 square handbreadths, like let's say 4 by 11, let's say, 4 by 12, it doesn't work. It has to be a square of 7 by 7, minimum. Minimum. Sukkah she'ein la shalish defanes psula. If a sukkah doesn't have 3 walls at least, it's disqualified. But if you had 2 whole walls, one next to another, like a gamma, the Greek letter gamma is like this, on the left side there, 2 full walls. What you could do is you can make not a full third wall, but an excuse for a third wall. Take a board that's wider than 1 tefach, wider than a handbreadth. Put it less than 3 handbreadths away from the second wall. In halacha, less than 3 handbreadths is called lavud, attached. So once you put this board within the space of 3 tfachim from this wall, now it's considered as though you have a third wall already extending. V'dayoy, and that's enough. However, the Rambam adds, V'tzarich laser lo tzuras pesach. You must also make the shape of an entrance. In the laws of Shabbat, we learned that if you have 3 poles, one like this, one like this, one like that, the area inside it is considered to be closed. So, on this third wall, you should add a tzurat pesach, the likeness of an entrance, because it doesn't have 3 full walls. And the commentaries argue where this tzuras pesach has to be. Some say, like in this picture, you have to add it further down the wall, See, this is where you put the board, so it extends the wall. Then you have to also add another pole and another pole at the end. So you really complete the third wall in a certain way. Other commentaries say no, it's in addition to the lavud, in addition to the attachedness, you have to add the top pole of the entrance over the board to the original wall, going that way. But the point is you have to have some form of a third wall in order for it to be considered a kosher sukkah. And it's actually hinted in the word sukkah. Right? Sukkah has the letters samach, kaf, and hey. Samach has 4 sides all around. It's the ideal sukkah, 4 full walls. Kaf is 3 walls. And the hey is 2.5. Or you could technically get away with 2.5 walls as long as they're attached in a halachic way. We already explained in the laws of Shabbat, whenever we talk about making the shape of an entrance, it doesn't have to actually be anything substantial. And even a reed here, a reed there, and a reed on top, and even if the top reed doesn't touch the bottom 2, but it's in close distance, that already counts as a tzuras HaPesach. Gimel, that's all if you have 2 walls, one next to another. But what about Hoyula Shteit Fane Zu Keneged Zu B'nei and Mefulash, in the left picture here? You have 2 walls parallel, not perpendicular. The space in between them is open. How do you make a third wall there? So here it's not enough to put down a small little board that's just 1 handbreadth tall, wide. Here you have to have you have to make the middle board have at least 4 handbreadths, and put it within the space of 3 handbreadths from one of the walls, again over here creating that attachedness. So now you have a wall that's attached to the other wall. And now it's kosher. And here too you must make the likeness of an entrance, and here too the commentaries debate if it means going this way or going that way. But the point is, somehow you have to complete the idea of the 3 walls. What if your schach, the covering of the sukkah, extends outside of the area of the sukkah, and 1 wall goes with them? We have a picture over here. It's basically, you have a 3-walled sukkah, and one of them is longer than the rest, with the schach going, so that the schach is basically at an angle. The entrance to the sukkah is slanted at an angle. Harehin kasukkah. The area with the extra wall counts as a sukkah, even though technically if you're under that part of the schach, you aren't surrounded by 3 walls. Right? But because the sukkah has 3 walls, you're good. Dalid, these are very common questions that even apply today. Many sukkahs have this issue. You have walls, they're attached at the roof of the sukkah, but they don't come all the way down. Happens a lot. People put out a tarp around the sukkah, and it doesn't reach the ground. If there's a distance from the ground to the bottom of the wall, 3 handbreadths tall, the whole sukkah is disqualified. They aren't considered to be a functioning partition. But if you have less than that space, then you're good. The wall is considered to be complete, and you're fine. What about the opposite? If the walls were aligned with the ground, but they didn't reach all the way up to the schach. This also happens in many sukkahs. You see this, they make smaller walls and open space at the top. It's actually easier to make such a sukkah kosher. Once the walls are 10 handbreadths tall, even if they're very far from the roof, the sukkah is kosher. Because once you have a 10 handbreadth wall, that's already a functioning partition. We saw many times in the laws of Shabbat, 10 tefachim is called a mechitza. So you're good. However, the walls do have to be aligned with wherever the schach is going to be. So if the schach is over here, the walls have to come up literally against the sides. They can't be too far. Hirchik.
Yeah, how far can they be?
How far can they be? Hirchik, he says right now.
Yeah.
Right? Like, what if they're further away? The schach is in the middle, the walls are further. Yeah? What happens then? If the schach is 3 handbreadths away from the wall, in other words, there's 3 handbreadths of empty space between the wall and the schach, even if the walls go all the way up, for sure if they don't, then psula, it's disqualified. Again, I don't know if you can see it over here, like a small picture, but you have the walls, and then you see this empty space around, and the schach is only in the middle. Is that what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the walls and the schach are not in alignment. So if there's 3 tfachim of space, you're out. Pachas mikein ksheira. Less than that, again, it's okay, because the principle of lavud, attached, less than 3 tvachim, it's all considered to be attached.
About 3 inches?
Say about 3 inches, yeah. 3-4 inches. Tala mechitza shegvaya arba o mashu ba'emtza. What if you wanted to make use of the halachic walls on both sides? So you have like this. You put a board in middle of your sukkah, a wall all around the middle. It's 4 tfachim and something. In other words, it's substantial. Bepachas mishleisha samach la'aretz or bepachas mishleisha samach lagad. Less than 3 handbreadths away from the ground, less than 3 handbreadths away from the roof. By the principle of lavud, by the principle of attached, both of these spaces are considered to be filled up with walls. We're not concerned about using the mechanism twice. You can use the same thing twice in both directions. Harezuk shera, it's kosher. Hey, if somebody makes a sukkah between trees, the trees become the wall. Now, we're not talking about the issue of the trees being the roof. That's going to be tomorrow. It's a whole different issue, having trees go over your sukkah. Let's say all the trees were just growing straight, and you were in a forest, and you're making this sukkah out of trees, essentially. The trees are your walls. If the trees were sturdy, they're strong, or maybe they're not strong, but you tied them down, to the point that no wind, regular wind, can blow them, make them shake. And you also filled up any empty space between branches with, let's say, some woven straw or whatever, so that the wind cannot blow it. The kosher is something you tie them all down. You have a kosher sukkah. There's no problem that it's trees. As long as it's tough and it's immovable, you're good. The guiding principle is any partition that cannot stand up to a regular land wind, because in sea, you have more powerful winds. We don't care about the winds in the sea. We care about winds on land. A regular land wind, if your wall can't stand up to it, it's not a partition. That's why some rabbis, even today, they don't like that people have these tarps or curtains around the sukkah, because they can shake. You have to kind of like tie them down, make them really, really sturdy. Vav, if somebody makes a sukkah on the top of a wagon or a boat, or in today's modern language, in the back of a U-Haul truck, right? You put up a sukkah. Ksheira v'oilin labiyamtiv. It's kosher, and you can go onto it on the holiday as well. There's no problem with climbing a wagon or climbing onto a boat on a holiday. With the truck, it may be a bit different. The rabbis today say you have to park it on a side street. If that's all you have, let's say you're in an apartment, you don't have a sukkah, right? All you have is a truck that you're able to park in front of your apartment building, and you can put a sukkah on top of it. So there's ways to go, and you can even use it on the holiday. But if you construct a sukkah on top of a tree, or on top of an animal, a camel, ksheira, it's a kosher sukkah, but you cannot use it on the holiday, only on Chol HaMoed. Those are okay, but on a holiday itself, you can't climb an animal, can't climb a tree. It's forbidden rabbinically. It's forbidden on a holiday to ascend onto a tree or onto an animal. So while you have a kosher sukkah, but it can't be used. Huh? On an elephant, yeah. It's pretty wide. Could work. What if part of your sukkah walls are made by human hands, and part of your sukkahs are trees? So the commentaries debate what this exactly means. Maybe it means the walls are supported by trees, or the walls are themselves trees. Ryan, we have to check. If, had you taken away the trees, the sukkah can stand on the walls that were made by human hands, it's kosher to ascend on it on holiday. Even if it's partially supported by a tree, since you don't need the support of the tree, you can use it on the holiday itself. But if you need the support of the tree, the example the Mishnah gives is if you have 2 walls that are standing on trees, and 1 wall is standing on human hands, so most of your sukkah are standing on trees. So going into the sukkah would be like going onto a tree on holiday, which is forbidden. In Chol HaMoed, you can use it, but not on the holiday. Zayin, sukkah she'ein lo gag psula. If a sukkah doesn't have a roof, it's disqualified. What does it mean, a sukkah without a roof? Ketzad. How does that look like? If you made the sukkah walls diagonal, such that they reached each other at an angle, like you have a picture over here.
A-frame.
An A-frame, exactly. Or you leaned it against the wall, so half an A-frame. There's no point in this sukkah where you can say that's the roof. There's no roof. But if there was a roof, even a handbreadth in space, in other words, you had, instead of an A-frame, you made them like this, and there's a tiny little board going through. So now that tiny little board is called the roof. Or all you had was the A-frame, but on the bottom of the A-frame you made a little wall. So now the whole A-frame can be called the roof, because this is the wall of my sukkah, and this is my roof. So the sukkah has a roof. Yeah, you lifted up the wall of the sukkah, that is. Near the wall, 1 tefach from the ground, and it's kosher. It's applicable even today. We were in a restaurant on Chol HaMoed. Their outdoor tent, their COVID tent, that they had for outdoor dining, turned it into a sukkah. Because they take out all the top stuff and they put schach on it. So now you have a schach that's diagonal. It's not a problem because the walls are full walls. So this diagonal roof becomes a roof and it's okay.
So we could have had sukkahs like teepees, little.
Yeah, it just can't be fully diagonal.
At the top.
Exactly. Open it at the top or open it at the bottom. A little bit. Sukkah agula, if you have a round sukkah, im yesh behakefa, kedei l'rabeya bo shiva tvachim al shiva tvachim, if it can accommodate a space where you can make a square in it of 7 by 7 handbreadths, afal pisha ein lazavi yisarezu ksher, even though it has no corners, sukkah doesn't have to have corners. As long as there's a space in it to make a 7 by 7 square, you're good. Ches sikech al gabe achsadra sheyesh la patzimin. If you put schach on top of a patio, for lack of a better translation, that has extensions from the pillars. Okay, this is a bit of a discussion as what exactly this looks like. It's a bit of a primitive picture, but it was very common in Roman architecture to have an area between 2 walls of a structure. So here you see the walls on each side. This would be like an open space, kind of like an atrium, but the 2 sides were open, and then they would put these pillars at the corners of the atrium to hold up this roof that was usually also open, like a sunroof. So now, if these pillars weren't there, it's basically like a sukkah that we had before where you have 2 walls and it's open in between, and you would have to have a 4 tefach, a 4 handbreadth wall in between. But here, the sages said, because they have these pillars, in a way we can treat the roof over here, the edge, as coming down and creating a closed 3rd wall. So we don't need anything in the middle. Only if it has these pillars with the extensions. Whether the protrusions on top of the pillars can only be seen from the inside or from the outside, as long as there are some projections, that allows the wall to extend downwards. Kshera, now it's kosher. But if there weren't any of these projections, then it's psula, then it's disqualified. Because basically it is a sukkah that's made like an open alleyway. All you have is the 2 sides of the atrium, the 2 sides of the structure. And the middle has no wall. And on the other side there's no projections. So all you have is an open alley. For an open alley you have to fix it in a different way. But once you have these pillars, you can rely on them. Yud, what if you put sechach on top of an alleyway that has the pole? Remember from the laws of Shabbat, whenever you have an open alleyway, since it's shared by a number of properties, you aren't allowed to carry there unless you put up a lechi, a small little pillar on the side. Now, even though technically this small little pillar doesn't have the validity, doesn't have the power of a mechitza, but for the laws of Shabbat, the rabbis were lenient, as long as you put it up, you're good. So now, if for the laws of Shabbat it's considered a wall, maybe I can use it also for sukkah. I'll put some schach over this alley, boom, it becomes my sukkah. Oy al gabe be'er sheyesh lapasin, or on top of a well that has the small little walls. Remember this from the laws of Shabbat also. If you have a well of water in the middle, the sages said you don't have to have full walls around it. As long as you have 2 little structures of 2 little walls at the 4 corners, now the whole thing becomes a walled area. Special for Shabbat. But since it's anyways functioning as a wall for Shabbat, so maybe I can use it as a wall for Sukkah. Says the Rambam, indeed you can. Harezu Sukkah Kshera, it's a kosher Sukkah, L'oisa Shabbos Shebeseicha Chag Bilvad. Only for the Shabbat during Sukkot.
With the cows.
Huh?
With the cows?
No, the cows are just there to tell you how big it has to be. As long as 8 cows can pass through, I couldn't get them out of the picture. It's relevant for the Shabbos laws. It's a kosher sukkah. Mitoich shelechi zeu pasin elu mechitzos le'inyan Shabbos. Since this little lechi, the little pillar at the edge of the courtyard, or these little boards, are kosher partitions for Shabbat, nach shevaisan kim mechitzos le'inyan sukkah. We can consider them also partitions for sukkah laws. Yud Aleph, Noat Arba, Kundasin al Arba Zaviyos Hagag, Vesikech al Gaban. What if you put 4 poles on the 4 corners of your rooftop and made tzchach on top of them? Right here. You have your house on the bottom, little steps coming up to the roof, and you put 4 poles on the 4 edges of the roof. Your sukkah, your actual sukkah has no walls. But there's walls on the bottom, the walls of the house. Says the Rambam, Hoyil v'hasikuch al sfas Hagag kosher. Since the schach is aligned with the edge of the roof, it's kosher. And we simply view the walls of the house as extending upwards to reach the schach. This is called in Gemara, gud asik mechitzta. Stretch and raise the partition. Since there are full partitions here, you just raise it up and it's all good. Yud beis, sukkah sheyesh lapsachim rabim v'yesh b'ksaleh chalin is harbet. What if a sukkah has many entrances and many windows? Our sukkah in Chabad has that. You walk outside, right? You don't see 4 full walls. All you see is a wall and a little opening. There's a wall, an opening. Harezuk sheira, it's a kosher sukkah. Ba'afal pisha parutz meruba ala oimid. The Rambam says even if the open space in total is bigger than the amount of wall, it's kosher. Now the commentaries say that only means you can't rely on that for all the walls, only for the 3rd wall. You can rely on that. But other commentators say no, when it comes to sukkah, as long as you have a semblance of 4 walls, you're good. But there cannot be any open space that's bigger than 10 amot, bigger than about 15 feet.
Do you measure ours?
We measured. Everything is kosher. But if there's an opening more than 10 amot, about 15 feet, even if the open space has a likeness of an entrance constructed around it, the total open space cannot be greater than the total standing space, and if it is, the whole sukkah is disqualified. Yud Gimel. Now we return to the laws of the height of the sukkah. Sukkah she'avira gavaya me'esrim amma. If you have a sukkah whose space was higher than 20 amot tall, disqualified, right? Umiyata bekarim muksases. You come in and you lay the floor with beautiful pillows and blankets, but not stam. You make a whole big pile, such that if you're on the pillows and blankets, now there's less than 20 amot space to the roof. Einoi miut. The fact that you put in pillows and blankets doesn't make the space less. Ba'afilu bitlam, even if you in your mind canceled them, you don't want to use them, they're going to sit there forever, it's not okay. Because people don't typically do that. People want to move their pillows and blankets after some time. Miyata betevenu bitlai, but if you brought in a bunch of straw and you layered the floor with straw and you raised the floor, so now that you have less space in between, ubitlai, if in your mind you canceled the use, you don't want to ever use this straw, hareza miut, it's considered to be a lessening and the sukkah is kosher. Needless to say, if you brought in dirt, that's a good reduction. But just dirt, if you didn't cancel it, if you didn't cancel the use, still not a reduction. You have to bring in the dirt and cancel the use. If your sukkah was higher than 20 amot, but the schach leaves, the branches are coming in, making it less than 20 amot. If the shade of the branches that are protruding is more than the sunlight, it becomes one big thick roof and it's kosher. Tomorrow we're going to learn that one of the operative rules of sukkah is that in order to be considered a good roof, it has to create more shade than sunlight. So if you were to remove the top layer of schach and only look at the bottom layer of these protruding branches, if that was enough to create more shade than sun, then the whole sukkah is kosher. Yudalid bana itzta baba keneged doifeno imtsoyes al pnei kula. I don't have a good picture for this, but imagine you have a 3-walled sukkah, okay, and then you built a bench along the inner wall. So wall, here's another wall, and the whole wall over here has a bench going along it. Im yesh ba'itzta bashir reicha v'sukkah kshera. If the bench has the proper size of a sukkah on its own, it's 7 by 7 handbreadths, then the entire sukkah is kosher. That's how most opinions understand it. Shulchan Aruch says that way as well. Even if the sukkah is 20 amot tall, more, but you made a bench along the inner wall, and that bench has the size of a sukkah, not only is in the area of the bench kosher, the entire sukkah is kosher. Other commentaries say no, only in the area of the bench, but the accepted halacha is that the entire sukkah is kosher. But if you only built the bench along one of the side walls, reaching the innermost wall, but it's along the side, so wall, and a wall, and the bench is over here. So now, psula. If between the edge of the bench and the opposite wall, there's more than 4 amot, more than 4 cubits of space, the sukkah is still disqualified. But if it's a big bench, and there's less than 4 amot of empty space, then the entire sukkah is kosher. No, I should correct myself. In this case, the Shulchan Aruch says that only the area on top of the bench is kosher. If you built a bench in the middle of the sukkah, it's not along any of the walls, just in the middle. If there's 4 amot of space to any direction outside the bench, psula, the sukkah is disqualified. Less than 4 amot, then the sukkah is kosher. We see it as though the partitions of the sukkah reach the bench. From the bench to the roof is less than 20 amot, so you're good. If you built a pillar, not a bench, it's a very thinner pillar, in the middle of the sukkah, the yesh by hechsher sukkah, and it has the area, surface area, of 7 by 7 tvachim, 7 by 7 handbreadths, psula, the sukkah is still disqualified, even on top of that pillar. Because here we don't have any recognizable partitions. On top of the pillar you may have schach, but there are no walls coming down, and therefore the sukkah is still disqualified. If the sukkah was smaller than 10 tvachim, okay, here's a very short sukkah. And you dug in the sukkah some space to make it bigger than 10 tvachim. You must examine the space from the edge of the digging to the wall. If it's more than 3 tvachim, then we can't attach these 2 spaces, and the sukkah is disqualified. But less than 3 tvachim, it's kosher. Any less than 3 space is like attached, as we explained in the laws of Shabbat. Now that Rambam says in the final halacha, Tezayin, Dafnei sukkah ksherim min hakol. The walls of the sukkah can be made out of any material. It's kosher, any material. All we need is a partition, whatever the partition looks like. Even if you use animals. You can even have your friend stand as a wall on the holiday. So you can eat and drink and sleep in a kosher sukkah, which your friend is being a wall for. But you have to make the wall without his knowledge. He cannot know that he is serving as a wall. You tell him, you're standing here today because I want you to stand here. And then you go and eat behind his back. But if you made it with his knowledge, then in holiday you cannot use it. The rest of the holiday, you can use it, it's fine. With utensils you can also use to make a 4th wall on the holiday. But the 3rd wall, on holiday you cannot make such a wall. Because the 3rd wall makes the sukkah kosher. And you cannot construct even a temporary tent on holiday. Putting the utensils there makes the wall. Makes the wall is forbidden on holiday. Rest of the holiday, is permitted. But on Yom Tov, you can only use utensils to make a 4th wall, not a 3rd wall.